Welcome to another episode of Mr. Plumb's Thoughts. In this one, I want to talk about when the spirit enters the body. And I want to start by giving a shout out to Eric Meadows on X for giving me the idea for this video. I apologize to others I haven't credited up to this point for ideas. I'll try to do better to give shout outs and give credit where credit is due. Now to the topic. Some say the spirit enters the body at conception. Some say it's when the fetus first kicks or moves, what some call the quickening. And others say it's at first breath, at birth. So, which is it? First, I have to emphasize there is no official doctrine on the matter. The church has not endorsed any official answer, and the official stance is that it remains a mystery. But from available comments by Latter-day Prophets and Apostles, I would argue that the Spirit enters at the quickening. And this is actually opposed to a former belief I had. If you follow me on X, I had previously argued that it happens at birth. But I've done some more studying, and I think that I have changed my mind now and aligned more with what the prophets have said. President Brigham Young once said that the body dies when the spirit leaves, and the spirit enters when the mother feels life come to her infant. President Young, he taught this on multiple occasions, and there's no indication in his words that he was giving an opinion. Take that for what you will. Then in 1909, the first presidency released a declaration that was called The Origin of Man, where they actually endorsed Brigham Young's teachings and stated that the body becomes a child when the quickening happens by the Spirit that the tabernacle was made for. Then you got down the road a little further, another statement on the matter by another first presidency in 1970, which said that it's still a mystery whether the life at the quickening was the result of the mother or because the spirit had entered. And then a little later, President David O. McKay said that the verbiage of 3 Nephi 1, where Christ told Nephi that tomorrow come I into the world, that this suggests the spirit takes possession at birth, and that any movement before that time must be from the mother. So how do we reconcile all of this? Those were all authoritative and prophetic statements, yet some seem to contradict each other. And President David O. McKay's statement could, some people might say, well, that was an opinion because it wasn't from the pulpit. It was, a letter written to somebody. But actually, I think that there is a way to reasonably reconcile all of these statements, including McKay's. And this is actually one of my favorite exercises, is, reconciling seemingly contradictory statements. And usually it requires digging in a little bit deeper and fully understanding the context of what the people were saying. A lot of times when we just take the words at face value, they do contradict. And so you have to understand the context and the meaning behind the words in order to get those understandings to align. So here's how I see it. Jehovah told Nephi that he would come into the world on the morrow. But it's important, I think, to note that he didn't actually visit Nephi or appear to him. Rather, Nephi simply heard the Lord's answer or heard the Lord's voice answering his prayer. But Jehovah, the actual spirit body, would have at that time, if we're going with the quickening belief, was already physically tabernacled in the growing fetus inside Mary's womb. Now, Luke 1:41 tells us that John the Baptist leapt inside Elizabeth's womb when he heard the voice of Mary, and Elizabeth was then filled with the Holy Ghost. In my opinion, this is pretty solid proof that John was already in the womb before birth. And if John was already in the womb, then we have to conclude that Christ already was too, which makes the snippet about the Holy Ghost subsequently entering Elizabeth make sense. God was literally present, in that meeting. Now remember, the same night that the Lord spoke to Nephi, he was already the eternal God that answered prayers and spoke to his prophets. His spirit was still capable of communication and agency and awareness, regardless of where that spirit was located. He didn't cease to be God just because he became embodied, nor did his godly function cease. Were that so, all of the laws of nature must have ceased when Christ came into the world, because he's the one who established all those laws. But they didn't. So we have pretty clear evidence that the operations of the Spirit continue even when we're in the flesh. And so coming into the world through this lens clearly doesn't mean entering the body, but rather being born, being, actually coming out of Mary into the world and taking his first breath and living among us as a man. Think about it like this. Conception is kind of like finalizing the blueprints for a house. The genetic design for the body to grow is completely set at that moment, and it doesn't change. But the occupant that will eventually occupy that house can't reasonably move in yet. Some foundational work must be done first. So it seems pretty likely that the Spirit doesn't enter at conception. So from there, the mother is like a foreman, delivering materials to the workers that are constructing the house according to the blueprints. The quickening then would be when the owner shows up to start moving in. The house isn't quite finished yet, but it's far enough along that the owner can walk through and open doors and test the plumbing, so to speak, things like that. So then from that point until birth, the Spirit is basically learning to operate the machinery, moving limbs and reflexes and sensations, and basically getting familiar with its new home. It is learning its first lessons necessary to survive. How to feed, how to digest, how to breathe. Mostly internal lessons at this point, not necessarily external, movement lessons. But how to make sure that internal world is completely set up and established so that the child can actually survive. So then birth is when the house is finished and the owner receives full control, and the construction workers all leave, and now it's up to the owner to continue maintaining that home. The Spirit then turns on the lights and breathes air and begins its mortal ministry. And the house, when we're talking about ages of houses, we don't measure the age of the house from when occupants move in. We measure the age of the house from the moment the construction was finished. So if conception is design, then quickening is occupation, and birth is when construction is complete. And that fits all the prophetic statements pretty neatly without contradiction. President David O. McKay didn't say that the Spirit enters at birth. He specifically said the Spirit takes possession at birth. So I think words do definitely matter when we're trying to figure out how to align all these statements. Now I definitely have to repeat that none of this is doctrine. The church has said plainly that there's no revelation fixing the moment. But studying the words of the prophets definitely helps us learn mysteries that have yet to be fully revealed. And those words, in my opinion, strongly suggest the Spirit enters the body at the quickening. Could I be wrong? Sure. But even if adhering completely to the prophets makes me wrong every now and then, it still makes me enormously more right than when I try to figure these things out on my own. Especially as a former apostate, I can testify of that boldly. When I was making all my own decisions, thinking I was smart and clever, it took me way off the deep end. So yeah, there's no real official doctrine, but with the words that we have, I think that we get a pretty clear understanding. And it could be wrong, and it could change. I don't know the mind of God. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So I hope this helped you guys with understanding that we really don't know, but that there are clues that can kind of give us a direction to look at. So thank you guys for watching as usual, and thanks for ideas. I've been getting more and more, which is awesome. That'll keep me going for quite a while. So if there's anything you want me to look into, drop a comment on any of the platforms that I publish to, and I'll look into it and decide if I can make a video on it. Definitely hit like, and if you're not already subscribed, go ahead and do that so that we can start kind of pushing my platform a little bit. Share these videos out to people who have questions, that these videos might help reasonably answer, and together we can build truth around the world. So thank God for everything he does for me, and hope he continues to help me understand these things, and I look forward to everything to come. Take care, guys.